right? So it's like, if you got an attitude problem, right? If I come back with an attitude also, like, do we just continue to all have attitudes? Does it just stay like that, right? Or maybe how you move, you talk, right, is a trigger to how the other person responds. And so now they character and their maturity ain't there to deal with that, and you ain't there either. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So then we just end up, so I think it's those situations too out there, and then so there's no personal accountability, because it's like you can talk to people all day. They're gonna tell you about the other person. We've been doing this thing, 15 years. Mm-hmm. Not us, just us, but even doing marriage ministry and mentorship and things like that. I've never sat down with somebody and they told me about themselves and how they. Mm-hmm.
It's always the other person.
Yeah, like their level of input to the situation. It don't mean that you obviously at fault, but it's just saying your character, you as a person, your maturity throughout the thing. What did that really look like? Like.
So, question: I know we've talked about this before, but do you feel like we feed off of each other, right? Or any couple, right? They feed off of one another. So, say for instance, you come, at me a particular way, and the attitude is just not right. It's harsh. It's cruel. Or it can be perceived that way, right? How do you think my response toward you in that moment would be?
Oh, most likely you have attitude too, like, or mm-hmm. Like, I don't think anybody just accepts it as and just like, I'm gonna just walk past and just ignore it, unless you just passive like that. Mm-hmm. But I think over time, unless you just passive like that, then you pretty much the other person just had their way, and you just ignore stuff. But I don't think, generally speaking, most people function like that. I don't think you can function like that and have a beautiful relationship. Mm-hmm. I think it's one-sided completely.
Going back to the yin and the yang that you were talking about, mm-hmm. and the one-sided, how people will come and they'll have something to say, but it's oftentimes about the other person. Not taking accountability or ownership for their role or their part in.
So if you want it to happen in a mature, beautiful way, then it takes both people to be fully locked in, fully growing in their maturity, their character, spiritually as well. And that's what God does in general. He takes all of that and transforms us. But if both people are not moving in that, you can be together, but can you experience like the fullness in the relationship of what you would hope that it'll bring? Otherwise, like, it's a long time to say I do, stay with somebody, and then it just don't mesh out and work. And somehow it worked to the point where you proposed. See, she said yes. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, when we get in this thing, like, it's just like, it somehow, unless y'all was crazy going into it.
But again, going back to the point that we were talking about earlier with immaturity and how people enter into these marriages, like, we already come in immature.
Yeah.
Right? We already come in where it's like, I'm still, in my immature ways, doing my immature things. And you know what I'm saying? So
that's the stuff you gotta, and it makes it harder on the other person, because like, you can be immature all by yourself, mm-hmm. right? And it's only affecting you and your, it's your own personal growth. When you got to team up with somebody, ain't nothing like being immature. Like in basketball, they one of the things I noticed, like in basketball, a lot of times it's the mature teams that win. It's never the young teams. The younger players also struggle, like in the playoffs, in the tougher games. A lot of times they struggle, and it's the mature guys guys that have had years in the league
Some
and
seasoned.
seasoned. Yep, that are and it works, right? So, and it's usually a mature unit. A lot of times, it's not even like if a young player is there, he'll typically be coming off the bench or something like that. But you're not playing a lot of the heavy minutes because it's that cohesiveness among the mature ones that get locked in, that understand every detail, every play, every minute again. Like you can't take and slack off, and that's the thing, because you can't be mature with working with somebody else, immature with working with somebody else.
Yeah. So I think a good question to pose to people, just entering into marriage or those that have been married for some time, who say, maybe the first 5 to 7 years of their marriage, did they find it the most difficult? You know how people say, oh my goodness, man, after I got over that first 5 years, that first 7 years, that 7-year itch, whatever, the little sayings are. I'm curious if people went into the marriage, went into the relationship out of an immature state, right? And that's where a lot of the difficulty, it was almost like growing pains, right? Growing through some things while going through some things, right? If that's kind of the onset, because you got to be mature, man, to make this thing work and for it to be healthy. Like, maturity has to be a place or a space that you're in.
And if you got two immature people that's immature in the same things, oh, it's really bad. You immature in your attitude, and the other person is too. That's a big problem. Finance is a big problem. So hopefully your immaturity ain't in the same areas, right? And then it's like, okay, well.
So what you mean, like I can be immature in finances and you can be immature in...
And the other person at least can hopefully hold it down, in some ways, versus both people just being reckless with money and the outlook on, investing and saving and things like that. But if both people just like, man, screw it, then we really...
a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, we really down, so. All right.
Thank you for sharing.